Hey, everybody, welcome to Act 3 on CHLY 101.7 FM. I am delighted that you are here today. And in today's conversation over Zoom, once again, I'll be sharing with you some interesting things that are coming up with the BC Children's Hospital. My guests in the booth today, Caden Tenecycke, I think I got that right, and his parents, Jim and Tracey. Welcome to the program, guys. How are you?
Good, thank you.
Really good.
Thank you
Good.
for having
Yeah,
us.
thank you for having us.
Super glad that you're here. Thank you so much for coming and having a conversation with us today. I know that there's a lot of, big fundraisers that have been going on in the last little while. Lots of people are really in need of funding, but you have a really specific need within the Children's Hospital because this is directly for kids, right? Can you tell us about how you got involved with the BC Children's Hospital?
Yeah, our journey kind of began when Caden was conceived. And we kind of went to the BC Children's Hospital affiliated Women's Institute for some testing
Yeah.
and some ultrasounds and what have you. Once we realized that he'd be a little person, we kind of went back and forth between Nanaimo and the Women's Institute. So our journey actually began quite early on after Caden was born here in Nanaimo. And they transferred us over to Children's Hospital for treatment. And so, yeah, at about 3 weeks old, I think his first treatment essentially began at Children's Hospital.
It must have been really, really wonderful for you to feel supported by an organization. Jim, what was your experience like? Do you want to share?
Well, just to give you some context, it's hard to tell on Zoom sometimes. We're all just in a little square, but like I have dwarfism and Caden has dwarfism. So we knew when Tracey was pregnant that there was a 50-50 chance that Caden would have dwarfism. And if he did, that it would entail some medical care. So that's kind of when Tracey started going over there to be monitored during her pregnancy quite a bit. We were very young, eager parents trying to be as proactive as we could.
Of course.
Caden probably started going to Children's before he was even born.
Essentially,
Wow.
yeah. Well, and they knew we were on the radar because, of course, Jim had his own journey through the Children's Hospital growing up. He was treated there for years and years growing up. And so, it was always, we're kind of a generation, a couple generations of Children's Hospital recipient patients. So
No kidding. Well, I mean, BC Children's Hospital has been around for so many years and has done some really, really terrific work. I do know that, of course, there is an annual fundraiser that they've been doing for a number of years now and have given out a whole lot of money, actually, to a lot of different winners of the lotteries. But at the end of the day, it's about the research, right? It's about finding the dollars that are required in order to further the cause for all kinds of issues that are related to children and their families. So, I think that, and I really, I please forgive me for my ignorance. I'll be honest about it. Most of my listeners know I have no problem saying I don't know a lot about a lot of things. And one thing I don't really understand is dwarfism as a whole. So just so that we can give a little context to this, I wonder if you guys would like to share, what kind of an experience that has been when you talk about having medical procedures done and things like that. Like what does all of that look like?
So there's under the term dwarfism, there's about 200 different types of dwarfism. And they all have a wide range of different medical issues that each separate condition struggles with. The one that I have a spondyloepiphyseal congenita, or SEDC for short, no pun intended.
I was gonna say, I think you kind of needed the SDs. The for short part, the pun part was grand, but the name in itself is complex.
Yeah, it's a quite complicated name, yeah. And so my dad shares the same condition with me. That's how I got it for sure. But yeah, so with our condition comes a lot of issues with the joints. And I had severe scoliosis. I had about a 90-degree curve in my back.
Wow.
And so in July of 2020, I had my spinal fusion, my second one actually. That was more located in my back. And then at about the age of 4, I had my neck fusion, which was higher up. So the occiput, which is pretty much the back of my skull, to the C5, which is about the 5th vertebrae down. So I had that when I was quite young. And so that kind of stems from instability within the neck due to cartilage. Delayed ossification is something that we really have as well. So our bones take a lot longer to become bone and ossify. So at the young age of 4, the reason I had to have my neck fusion was because my neck wasn't stable enough to essentially hold the weight of my head. And it wasn't strong enough if I had tripped and fallen, or if I fall off a bike or something like that, it wasn't strong enough to be stable to protect myself.
The
My
decision
goodness.
was made just before he actually went into kindergarten, that it was at that stage where, being around other kids, and he's at that age to start school, and the risk became even further. So we made the decision at that time that was the best time for him to have that procedure. So it was a big one. 4 years old, he was just entering kindergarten, and
Wow.
he got a week in at kindergarten, and then they called and said, let's do it. And so he missed the first 3 months. He had a halo, so he had to wear one of the halos that come up and screw into the skull and kind of stabilize his neck while it heals after the fusion. And so it was quite
Wow.
a lengthy procedure. But yeah, that was definitely the first major that you had to have. And then from there, it's just been a progression through hips and knees and ankles, and just keeping all the joints aligned under him,
Yes.
so that
Yes.
the grand poobah of surgeries was your back surgery in 2020. So everything else had to kind of be aligned underneath him in preparation for that. So keeping his legs straight and monitoring that and his growth.
And there's
My
a
goodness.
great deal of thought that goes into not only the procedures, that's the doctor's expertise, but way options, like when to go ahead with those procedures. As
Exactly.
his neck, for example, you want the bone to get as large as possible so that they've got something to operate on that's more stable naturally, but you can't let it go past the point of where it's a danger to him. So, he's been constantly going to children's where they, take MRIs and x-rays and closely monitor that situation, and then have the conversation with us as a family.
From 14 months old, I remember the first initial time they discovered the instability in the neck after having suspected it for some time. He was about 14 months old when he actually started wearing a neck brace. So
Wow.
we used to call him our little tortuga, so Spanish for turtle, because he had essentially a brace that fitted together from the front and back, and then strapped around his torso, and then a bar that kind of held, and a padding under his neck that held his neck in place with a plate at the back. So essentially, he had this brace that held his neck in stable position. And then, that he wore that until he was old enough and the bones had ossified enough so that he could actually have the surgery itself safely, so that there was enough bone for doctors to actually screw into so the fusion could hold. So there is a long, lengthy process of knowing how to get him to the point where surgery was even possible. So that whole maintenance and watching and monitoring and closely monitoring, so that you're at that pivotal point where, okay, we've got enough bone now, thinking ahead, the risks that he's going to be facing going into school, do we have enough bone to go ahead with the neck surgery and the fusion, or do we have to wait longer? And so there's a fine balancing act, and a lot of maintenance procedures and forethought given to what is to come and what we need to do to get there.
Well, and I would imagine that the bone, certainly we know that children's bones over time, they're much softer, and because they are meant to be pliable, I would imagine that there's a science to determining, like, what is that level going to look like and how stable can this be? But I can't deny that as a mom, I would be terrified. As a dad, I would be terrified of the situation. And in a way that there's some great things that are happening for you specifically, Caden, because you have a mentor in your dad. Did you, Jim, have these procedures as well? Were you able to help to support him and as he was going through this? I would imagine that would have been really, really difficult for you to be part of it, at the same time, know that you understood what he was going through.
Yeah, I think that's probably why we were more proactive, because when I was born, in the 70s, nobody knew anything about my condition, let alone, what the level of care. Like it was more, I feel like it was almost a bit of a learning process when I came along.
Sure.
So I was the relationship with the hospital, I was hoping had improved, and you could really see the expertise had grown even from the time I was treated in the 70s and 80s to the level of care that Caden got continues to get there.
Of course.
Still
And
the
from
same compassion and the same
Oh, indeed.
great staff, but now their expertise has really stepped up.
And the good news is with funding, science actually does help to facilitate this for sure. I'm, again, I don't want to be too voyeuristic, but with respect, Jim, has this come from your family genetically for a number of years? Were you the first in your family? How did that part all come together?
Yeah, no, and it's a common question because everybody, even when I was a kid, so are your parents short? And for
Yeah.
us, I was the first. Like there was no history of it on either of my parents' side, so I was the first. And then from me and now Caden, each generation, we have a 50-50 chance of passing it along.
Indeed, yeah. And Tracy, on your side of the family, were there any genetic dispositions or?
No, none at all. None at all. And Jim and I met in high school, so we've had a long history together. But that was something that we could have looked into before we got married and what have you, like just knowing what the chances were genetically.
Indeed, yeah.
And we decided to kind of just take that bridge when we were ready, cross that bridge when we were ready to do that. And so, I mean, we always kind of knew. And because I'm average height and he's LP, little person, there is that 50-50. But had I been a little person as well, those odds do change depending on the spouse, right? So for Caden going forward, if he chooses to marry another little person, of course, those odds would change dependent on the type of little person. Or if he marries an average height person, then 50-50.
And Caden, at the start of the conversation, you mentioned that there was a number of different forms of dwarfism. With these different types, are there some that are more focused on the bone, some that are more focused on the intestine, more in the kidney, the heart, the liver, the spleen, all of that stuff organically? I'm just curious if there's, a greater disposition for kidney failure or for heart disease or any of those other things that go along with your specific dwarfism.
Yeah, so with our specific type of dwarfism, and pretty much all dwarfisms, I believe, so it's a skeletal dysplasia. So we still have the same size organs, like I have the same size lungs and livers and stuff as an average 17-year-old would, just confined in about half the size, right? So stuff, it does tend
compressed
along with it. Something my father has kind of been dealing with recently has been breathing. He's had some breathing issues, and that's because having lungs that are average size but being compressed for a long time, it can definitely cause some damage both internally. So yeah, that is something that can happen going forward for sure.
Yeah,
it is a skeletal condition, so it's mostly bone related, and then but that can, because I've got a really bad scoliosis that has done some damage to my lungs, but that's because of the skeletal condition.
Yeah, I would imagine.
Yeah, each type of dwarfism kind of has their own set of symptoms and different things that they need to watch for. For instance, another one for Caden and Jim are detached retinas, some hearing loss. So some little people with SED, spondyloepispheral dysplasia, will have different varying levels of their need for back surgery or their need for the instability correction in the C1, C2, or the different levels of blindness per se for vision. So Jim, about 5 years ago now, he experienced the detached retina, and we were super lucky and fortunate to get on it quickly. He knew what to look for, and so we were able to act quickly and save his sight. But we have some friends who, have not been as fortunate or have had continued issues with their eyesight to a level of blindness. So, it really does depend on, how your genetics are laid out, essentially. Even though you have SED, like Jim and Caden, your symptoms could be very different. So even within the own diagnosis, there's a lot of difference and variance in the symptoms.
Yeah. With COVID, the fear of getting a lung infection or an additional infection as a consequence of that, what happens for you? Are you at an increased level of potentially having a fatal situation as a result of COVID or any other it's not I don't want to say flu, but it's not a flu, but I'm at loss for the word that I'm looking for. But basically, I'm an autoimmune person. For those people who know me in the community, and a lot of people do, I have been suffering from autoimmune for a number of years. I've had a condition for over 30 years. I'm always ultra sensitive to being around the potential that I could get sick from my lungs and have some very serious ramifications as a result of it. And so I'm curious about dwarfism in the sense that you have these, as you just mentioned, Caden, you know, you've got regular size organs inside a smaller frame. And so how much more susceptible are you to getting, you know, infection or disease as part of our everyday business of living?
I was really paranoid about COVID because of the lung issue.
Yeah, I bet.
So my scoliosis wasn't corrected as well as Caden's. So back in the day, it almost was cemented in place. So because of that, I have lost a great deal of lung capacity. I'm probably dealing with maybe 25 or 30% capacity of my lungs.
Sure.
So with the little bit that I've got, I was really worried about, because I have had pneumonia in the past, and whenever I get even
Yes.
pneumonia, it's can be serious. And as a child, I
Absolutely.
got it quite a bit. And when Caden got his scoliosis, that was one of the things I was hoping for the most. And you even noticed as soon as he finished scoliosis surgery, how much better he could breathe. Like, even though he was in tremendous pain, I remember him saying, I can breathe a lot better.
Yeah.
The deeper,
Yeah.
the deeper kind of ability to breathe deeper. Caden has definitely benefited from that since his spinal correction. Whereas, like Jim said, he didn't have that ability to get any correction in his spinal surgery. He only got to cement in place because it was done as an emergency.
Sure.
So he's really suffered from that especially now in the last 5 years, essentially has been even more. And then of course, the risk of COVID on top of that was definitely real for us, to the point where I actually left my classroom teaching position and went to online teaching for a year just to protect us that little extra level. And then once it hit, Caden was recovering from his spinal surgery. So he actually missed the first 3 quarters of his grade 11 year.
Wow.
You know, quite honestly was kind of, for lack of a better term, kind of good timing, essentially, because nobody else was really doing a lot. So he didn't miss out on a lot because it was right through COVID that he was doing his major recovery. So we were fortunate, but at the same time, obviously fortunate's not quite the word, but
It was the best.
I know
of
what
a
you mean.
the best of a
situation,
bad situation. Exactly.
yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. I, you know, there's a little bit of a blessing that goes with that. And I recognize it's not always easy to know how lucky you are when until you realize how lucky you are.
Yeah, you got to look, you got to
Always look for the silver lining. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, there's always something. But Caden, you know, grade 11 is now coming by. You're 17. Did you graduate this year or did you graduate last year?
I did, so I graduated just in June here. So
Just in June. Congratulations. Grade 12 is hard enough, but you did it in a COVID year. Oh my gosh.
thank you. Yeah, and actually that kind of year that I took off from grade 11, it really changed my outlook on school, and it made me take for granted more my grade 12 year, because when I came back after not seeing pretty much anybody for about a year, it was a lot more fun. I got to hang out with my friends, right? So it was a really fun year the last year for sure.
You appreciated the ability to be able to be social and kind of have that experience back. I think
No
he appreciated
kidding.
it more. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, there's something to be said about having that social side. And, you know, I've been a teacher for 35 years, and I got to tell you, I really saw a difference in the way people were coming. You know, there was a new appreciation when it came back to coming back to task, right? Coming back and doing things again. And so, like, I'm with you on that.
Yeah.
Kane, have there been times when you've had to use mobility equipment in order to get around? I mean, certainly I would imagine, you know, when you were 4, you had mom and dad and you probably had some mobility equipment, but now, you know, as you were graduating and as you've recently gone through surgeries in the last couple of years, you know, how quick are you at using the mobility equipment, and what does that look like for you?
So when I was really young, when I had my spinal fusion or my neck
Yeah.
fusion, sorry, at the age of 4, for the first, I can't remember how long exactly, but for the first little while, I used a wheelchair,
Yeah.
just because I wasn't able to walk with a big cage around my head.
Yeah, no, that couldn't have been
So
easy.
I did use a wheelchair, and then after I got past recovery for my neck fusion, I
Yeah.
used for in school, I actually used a little kick scooter. It was a little
Oh.
3-wheeled kick scooter that we had cut the post down to make it short and
Yeah.
fit me perfectly. And that
Sweet.
was really good for me because it allowed me to get my exercise and be able to be active and build muscle, but it also allowed me to take a bit of a break. I'd use it in the halls around the classroom, and
Yeah.
especially outside on the playground and that kind of thing. And then at about grade 3, I actually got my first Segway. So it's
Nice.
a little two-wheeled, kind of very similar to a hoverboard, but with a handlebar. So it's a little two-wheeled device. And I got the first one, like I said, in about grade 3. And ever since then, I've been using some form of a Segway. Recently, we've kind of switched to these newer models, which are way better. That's definitely something where you see technological innovations come along for sure. So yeah, I do mainly use a Segway, and it's essentially my legs. I use it pretty much everywhere.
That's incredible. How strong do you think your legs are overall? Do you feel like, do you find weaknesses at times more so than, I'm not talking about regular growing pains. We all have growing pains, even as adults, right? There's stuff that goes on in our bodies that, we feel for sure, especially with the COVID-15, I want to say for a lot of us, right? I'm feeling my legs aren't working nearly as well as they used to. I personally love that kind of mobility equipment, but I'm curious about how much physical leg work, like what are your muscles like in your legs, partially as a consequence of using a mobility device and partially as a consequence of, just growing through all of that you've been through.
So with my legs and my hips, I've had a couple surgeries on my hips. They essentially what they did is it was, what was it called? Double hip osteotomies, double hip femoral derotational osteotomies. So what that means is essentially they took the heads of my femurs and they cut the top off, and then they repositioned them and then reattached it using plates, rods, and screws. And so that was because of my condition, the head of my femur was pretty much dislocating from the hip joint itself. So with that came a lot of pain, and I still deal with it today. And it's something that is really hard to struggle with because I do really struggle with walking. It's something I can't do a lot of. And it's more a result of my condition than a result of relying on a mobility device. So I kind of see it. I use my Segway as a way to get from point A to point B. So the way I used to describe it is at school, for example, from a classroom to the gym, I would take my Segway. But once I was in the gym, I would run around and play a bit with my buddies, right?
Gotcha.
So it's not a replacement for me to not use my legs at all. It's a way to kind of further use the step. So a step that I don't take today is a step that I can take tomorrow.
Understood. Yeah.
So it's definitely, it's a result of my condition more than relying on medical devices.
And
Well,
actually, it's quite interesting because, we were talking to our doctor about this, Dr. Riley at BC Children's Orthopedic Department just recently, actually, at our last appointment with Caden. And, there is that kind of perception that on a Segway, you're not really exercising. It's just, you're riding. And essentially that's not true, because on an actual Segway, you are engaging your core constantly because it's all about your balance and you're the one in control of the device. It's not controlling you, or essentially like where you're not riding it. You are actually controlling it. And so you're engaging your core so much and your muscles by standing and shifting your balance and everything constantly. So there is a lot of exercise happening unconsciously. So it's not something that is going to cause atrophy in his muscles or something along that line. So that is the misperception about a Segway as opposed to a wheelchair, where you're not really engaging, you're riding, whereas the Segway, you're controlling it. So there is that little bit of a difference between the two types of mobility devices.
And I think that that's a really good clarification, because I think that there is a lot of assumption out there over the mobility devices as they stand. I know for myself, there's two things I just want to shout out for. Number one, my gosh, Caden, you've been through a lot. There's no question about that. But the fact that you can say those Latin descriptions of what you're going through, 10 gold stars on you, buddy, because I got to tell you, for most of us, that's hard enough to do. But also the ability to use these mobile devices in order to augment your growth and to support you, as opposed to be dependent upon it. And I think that's really, I think it's so important for people, especially to recognize that, it can be easy. It's very easy for people to get lost in the physical side of things and not want to go ahead and be, whatever. I'd like to be a shade voyeuristic, but only in respect. how was it being with your classmates during these times, especially when you were in 2020, when you were going through surgery? How did the school, how did you feel supported by the community and by your school itself?
So my friend group and my classmates, they've always been great. I've grown up with them pretty much since kindergarten.
Yeah.
So, nowadays it's not a question. People don't even really think of me as the little person in the group. It's all that's just Caden who
Yeah.
drives a Jeep. He's just an average kid, right? So
Yeah.
that is something that is really crucial, I think, and has really benefited me within my
Yeah.
recoveries, because having friends that I can rely on, or having friends that I don't know, something that I don't have to worry about, if I show up in a wheelchair after having surgery, if I need help getting up a ramp or something, everybody knows me and I know everybody, so I can
Yeah.
ask
They
somebody
just
to give
make
me
it
a lift.
happen.
Yeah, and it's
Yeah.
not something that's questioned, or not something that somebody would criticize me for. It's just everybody's been really good with helping me in anything that I need. So I think that has really helped me with my
Yeah.
recoveries, having that
Do-
core group of friends.
So from a graduation perspective, were you able to actually participate? And I recognize I'm talking more of a COVID year. Like, I don't know how June went, regardless of anything else. How was grad? Like, were you guys able to participate in graduations this year?
Yeah,
Yeah,
so
was this the first year
this was the first year in the last 3 years. So we were the third year of grad since COVID, and this is the first year to
Yeah.
have a full grad. So we
Oh,
were,
Wow.
yeah, we had a full prom, and we had a full grad as well, where we could have our family members come and watch. That was something that did take a lot of thought and effort, though, because an example would be sitting for grad for me. We
Sure.
had a bunch of bleachers, and we were sitting in these bleachers, alphabetical orders for a last name. And so me being T, I'm pretty much smack dab in the middle.
Sure.
When I'm 3.5 feet tall and sitting, I'm about 2.5 feet tall. So when I'm crowded by a bunch of 6 foot or taller guys, you can't see me. So that's something that we had to do. So we built a box that was essentially just an add-on to the bleacher, and it just raised me up a couple feet. And then another thing was also for getting my diplomas and for a couple of the scholarships I received, you have to walk up on stage and then do a lap around the full gym showing your diploma or your scholarship.
Yeah.
And so that was another thing. I can walk up this couple steps to get to the stage, accept my diploma or my scholarship, say thank you. But the walk around the gym is something that I'm not able to do. But that was also a problem, was getting my Segway from one side of the gym to the
To
other
the other, for
without going on
sure.
the stage.
Right.
And so what I actually had happen is my one of my old science teachers, and that's another thing, the staff there is really great. They don't hesitate to pick up my Segway if I need help or carry a textbook for me. So one of my old science teachers, his job during that night was to grab my Segway and bring it to the front of the stage on the other side for me. So when I would come up to receive my diploma or my scholarship, I would walk up the stairs, or just before the stairs, sorry, I'd park my Segway, then walk up, accept my diploma, and then my Segway would be waiting for me on the other side.
Brilliant.
And so his job was to grab my Segway, run behind the stage so nobody would see him, or duck right in front of the crowd so nobody would get him in the pictures or anything, and he would deliver my Segway to me on the other side. So there's a lot of thought that goes into something like that. Another thing that was actually a last minute panic was getting my cap and gown, because my cap
Yes.
wasn't an issue, but the gown, we had gone through all these specific measurements. We had talked with the company that was providing them for us and said, hey, yes, these measurements are actually correct. I am actually 3 foot tall, like 3.5 feet tall. You're not reading it wrong. Can you do this?
They
Yeah.
came back a couple times. Can we just confirm that this
Yeah,
is
totally.
Yeah, they did. And honestly, if I was somebody and got my measurements, I'd think, okay, this
What?
could be a typo because it's not the average thing. Right. So they did. They came back and said, yeah, for sure, we can do that. But
Yeah.
the problem was when comes graduation day, and it's about an hour before the pictures, not even, we get our cap and gown, and I open up my gown and it's right to the floor. They hadn't done any modifications for
they
me.
just gave you a small one.
Yeah, they
Yeah,
gave me a
small.
size small, which a size small is still meant for people just under
5 feet. Yeah.
Of course, right?
So I had about 2 or 3 feet of just gown dangling on the floor that wasn't going to work. So just before the pictures, everybody went on hold, and one of the teachers there, she knew how to sew, and she was a previous sewing teacher there. So she grabbed the sewing machine out of storage, ran to the storage locker, and they cut it up and sewed it for me right then and there. And that's
Wow.
something that I think is really important. And it's amazing to have teachers and the staff that are there to help me, because there could have been, sorry, like there's nothing we can do.
That's a testament of the community that is, able to kind of form around you when you grow up in the same community, and you have those people that have, they've been familiar with you and there for you the whole time. They kind of recognize, okay, we just need to do this. There's no waiting. We just do it now, right?
Yeah, get it done.
They jump
Yeah,
to action.
absolutely.
The same goes for Caden was one of the valedictorians for his grad year. And so during the speech, of course, they didn't want to make a miniature or a smaller podium. So, he wanted to be on level with his co-valedictorian. So they built him essentially a staircase, a very elongated staircase, so that he could be at the same level and make the speech eye to eye, so just those little things that make such a huge difference. And actually a shout out to the vice principal at the high school last year. Caden was a part of a group of, I think, 10 students who all got the Dogwood diploma or the Dogwood scholarship. And of course, with Caden being at 3 feet tall, standing up for all the pictures, the vice principal actually asked everybody, I guess she had prearranged it. And so she kind of just gave them all a look, and everybody went, I'm going to cry because it was such a meaningful moment. But everybody,
I'm with you on that. I am,
and everybody,
so yes.
Get a photo op, and it was, and again, it just shows that community, right? So
I think that we are so blessed in Nanaimo to have such an extraordinary community, and and your tears are tears of joy, and that's the most wonderful part, is like the support that we have here. May I just ask which high school you graduated from? Is that okay?
Yeah, I graduated from the Ladysmith Secondary School.
Beautiful. Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. Ladysmith is so fantastic as it is. Everyone there is so wonderful. Everyone here on Vancouver Island, I really feel that we're such, we have such blessings just in that in itself. For those people that have just tuned in, I'm just going to take a moment for a quick station identification here, because I'm loving this conversation so much. And if you've just tuned into Act 3 on CHLY 101.7 FM, thank you so much for being with us today. We are always, always, always delighted to be able to share stories that have impact and meaning and just make everything so much better all around us, that we know that these people are here for us. So I want to thank our guests today, and I'm going to shout out their names again in one more second. If you have just tuned in, please continue to tune on every Monday on Act 3 at 1 o'clock. We're always glad to bring you these wonderful guests, but you can also subscribe on our YouTube station. Don't forget, you can check us out at Act 3 Media Productions at YouTube. So by all means, check us out there as well. And we always love it that you tune into Shaw Cable 4. Of course, season 2 of Act 3 will be coming this fall. We're super excited about already working on those plans to bring you our next episode for season 2. So thanks again for tuning into Shaw. In the Zoom booth with me today, I have such a great blessing to be here with Caden Tenecycke. I hope I've got that right this time. I always double check it to be sure. His parents, Jim and Tracey. We're talking a little bit about a huge fundraiser. We haven't really gotten into it yet, but it's part of the major reason why we're here, is that every single dollar that we raise in this forum goes to kids, and it goes to kids for the right reasons. BC Children's Hospital has done an extraordinary job of looking after some of our most beloved youth and children, and we need the dollars to continue to flow through the hospital to get this groundbreaking information. Caden, I wonder if you'd be so kind to tell us a little bit more about the Dream Lottery and the BC Children's Foundation, and what does all of that look like? Why are we here sharing this information with our community?
Yeah, so being a part of the Children's Hospital my whole life and going through the medical procedures and everything that I've gone through, I've really seen firsthand the importance behind the research and the care that this fundraiser is helping fund. So the research and the care that is provided by the orthopedics team at the BC Children's Hospital, it's a world leader, and it sets a standard for the rest of the world to follow. And the specialists there and the research that they are again provided with, it allows for amazing innovations, and it's something that I've experienced firsthand. Like I said, especially an example would be my father and I. We've gone through pretty much everything the same. Exactly, we've got the exact same pretty much medical portfolio, but the differences within the procedures are miles of difference. An example
Of
would be
course. Yeah.
one of the surgeries that I had in my knee, which I actually just had about 2 weeks ago, is an 8-plate procedure. And so what that does is it prevents knock knees. And so that surgery for my father, it was about a 6-month to a year process. And then it turned into about a 2-year process. Whereas for me, it's about a 2-week recovery.
Wow. Wow. That's significant.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's a big one.
So that's one of the
Yeah.
biggest improvements that we've seen. And so this dream lottery is really allows for these innovations to be developed and allows for the research behind these procedures to be able to come through.
It's an easy and simple way for people to get involved and to help give back to the Children's Hospital, because I think it's a world renowned facility, and we need to be able to fund these ongoing research initiatives, because healthcare changes, and in order to afford that change, you need to be able to fund research and find those innovative ways to treat children with all different kinds of symptoms and care needs. And so we've, like Caden said, we've experienced that firsthand, and so we really have a unique perspective on the generational change that has happened just for our own story. And so to be a part of that and to be involved in that and really reiterate the importance of getting involved. And this is one simple way of people out there getting involved and,
Yeah,
having a little
absolutely.
bit of an opportunity to win something back for the money that you're investing. So $100 ticket, you could win a new home, you can win a new car, you can, 50-50. And there's lots of different ways to be a part of that. And this is just one more way that you can give back.
Well, normally in my station identification, I tell people to go get a piece of paper and a pen, and I neglected to do that. So I'm just going to reach back real quick and remind people, you're going to want to figure out how to get these tickets, and you're going to want to support them. So just go grab yourself a piece of paper and a pen while we continue our conversation. Jim, I'm curious from your perspective, because you now, the adult between you and your son, obviously is an adult as well. Now you graduated high school, you're on your way to, college, university, what have you. We're going to find out more about that in a moment. But as you've seen these life-changing surgeries happen for your son, and your own body, how has it been for you are you able to go back at this stage of your life as well and have some of the surgery done now that these incredible advances in technology, advances in surgery have taken place? Is that something that is on the horizon? And is it expensive for your family to be able to deal with all these surgeries?
So the children's is just that. It is a children's hospital. So
Of course.
that's
Yeah.
one of the things that we're dreading for Caden even is, I think the last surgery I had there, I was 19.
Yeah.
And so,
And
at
that's
that
pushing
time,
it.
I remember them saying, we just squeaked you in.
Yeah. Yeah.
But with our condition in particular, most of the procedures are done through your childhood. It's to catch and try and get as much correction while you're growing.
Sure.
And then the growing is part of the problem because, our bones and joints don't grow evenly. So that causes them to go out of kilter. So the idea is if we can get as correct as possible once I stop growing or once the Caden stops growing as an adult, hopefully the problems ease a bit. Like you won't have to have the 8 plates in once his growth plates close, for example.
Yeah.
So it is mostly set up for children's care, but that's a whole other story that we even dread with Caden is that level of care does stop when he gets to be an adult, and we're worried about that already.
I bet. Well, it sounds like your family has been so proactive already, just right from the very beginning, all the way along from conception to, the first major surgeries at 4 years old and continuing through, his youth and soon adult life. Right. And so my compassion and empathy for what happens next is I just what are your plans? What do you plan on doing, Caden, as you walk ahead in your future?
So I'm headed to the University of Victoria in September. I'm
Woot,
taking,
woot.
yeah, I'm taking the business commerce program.
Nice.
So going into my first year, so I'm really excited to tackle that challenge. It's going to be a lot. It's going to be a lot of work, and it's going to be a new scene living down there on my own.
I was gonna say you won't have your parents down there because they'll be in Lady Sister. You're gonna have the true college university experience. Have you found residency already? Are you in placement for housing, or will you be living in a home nearby? What does that look like for you?
So that's something. Originally, I was placed in a regular dorm with a
Sure.
roommate, but I applied for a priority consideration request because of my medical issues and my medical needs. I can't really use, like an example would be a shared kitchen.
Yeah.
Because when you're in the regular dorms, you have a shared kitchen at the end of the hall, and any average person can go there and make their breakfast or whatever, right? So something that's a problem with that is me being 3.5 feet tall, I can't reach any of the counters. So either I'm lugging a bunch of stools from my dorm to the end of the hall and then using it to get in the fridge and then moving it over here and yada yada. So I've been moved to my own apartment within the UVic. It's actually the new building that's just been built. And so it's
Fantastic.
an accessible apartment. And so it's a 1 bedroom, 1 bath, just a small something, but it's given me the ability to now bring in my own modifications and make it livable for me. So we're actually going down to view it in a couple weeks here, just to make sure that we do figure out all the modifications that we can make and bring in for me for September.
Well, it's gonna be an empty nest. You were already crying, Tracy. How are
I
you gonna manage
know. Don't
that?
get
Like,
me started. Don't get me started. No.
right? Like,
No,
I mean,
it's super exciting to watch him kind of, forge ahead and make his own decisions, and life challenges and decisions are now, something that he's facing on his own potentially. And so it's good. It's time. He's really eager, and I'm really proud of him. And, I think we've been able to provide him with a really solid foundation, and he's got a really good attitude and a good mind to set.
sure
And
does.
so I
Mhm.
think it's time. Like of course I'm super sad. And I mean, to ask me again in 2 weeks when he actually leaves, I'll be a mess. But, this is what has to happen. And
Well, that's
so
what we raise our kids for. I mean, we
exciting.
raise them so that they are productive, fabulous,
Yeah.
wonderful individuals for community, that they support the
What I've
community.
always dreamt of, right? So to see it come to light now and actually start happening, this is what I wanted. I wanted him to be independent, and that's how we've always raised him. So
So we're just going to put Caden aside here for a second. Empty nest
Throw
for
him
mom
away.
and dad. Empty nest for mom and dad. What are you guys going to do? What's your plan? The smiles, I love it. I know our radio listeners can't actually see the smiles, but they're huge. Dad's got some plans.
No, that takes some getting used to. Caden has become, I love parenting, and that
Yeah.
was, it's been a pleasure the whole time, from when he was a little kid to now, like you say, he's more of an adult the last couple of years. So, I mean, politics, and I mean, we're always bantering back and forth. It's just, I've had him around. He's been like my best friend, so it's going to be strange for sure.
Yeah, no kidding. Do you guys play sports together or video games together, or do you have like a thing that's just yours?
Business stuff, probably. Like,
Oh,
That's our sports and video games. I've tried to get him to do a couple of games, but he's too easy. We used to we used to play NHL on the computer, and when I was
Yeah.
younger, it was used to be him teaching me the controls, and now it's me teaching him again. So he
that's
gets
fantastic.
one game in once in a while, and then he's done.
yeah, when they're little, you teach them and you have all the power, it's easy. But then there's a certain point that they just slaughter you, and it's not even worth playing.
It's not you letting them win anymore. It's like
No.
for real.
Yeah.
My son and I are the same. I mean, Dakota is, it's the glory of them becoming adults. The friendship changes, and it's such a wonderful, it's a different level of wonder, right? And, he just kicks my babushka. Like, there's nothing, I can't play with him for hardly anything anymore. He's already got, and I don't, and my grandchild, who's like 3 years old, is already so well technologically advanced. It's like, Jonathan will just call me, almost, not quite, but you know what I mean? Like, it's amazing how that happens. So what are you looking forward to the most about being in university, Caden?
I'm looking forward to meeting a bunch of new people and
Yeah.
more people that are interested in the same goals that I am.
Yeah.
I really
Where do you
like.
think you'll land when you finish your degree? Have you got an idea what you want to do for a career or for work wise, or what's your plan?
Yeah, so
thought?
I really enjoy public speaking and content creation. So making YouTube videos or photography, that kind of stuff. So I
Right
really
on.
want to try that for a little while. But with while I'm taking my degree, and then once I'm done my degree, I would eventually like to start up my own business. Right now, I would like to do media and kind of filmmaking, photography, that kind of side of things, web design, all of that. So that's kind of my idea right now, but maybe I'll take my degree and find something more interesting or find a passion somewhere else. But that's where I'm pretty set on right now.
You know, I'm so delighted that you've had the journey that you've had. You know, I can't imagine it being easy, but with the support of BC Children's Hospital, and, you know, it looks like it's just been such a terrific wraparound opportunity. And to know that families all across the province are relying on BC Children's Hospital for these dollars so these success stories can happen is just so bloody heartwarming. My son was also born in that hospital, not in BC Children's Hospital directly, but in the women's hospital. And the support that I had from them at that time was so fantastic. You know, they just they're incredibly knowledgeable, wonderful people who really do care. And I think that, you know, when we've got a strapped medical system as it stands, to know that we've got vulnerable children that really need this additional support, we need to find a way to make this happen. How about you tell everybody how they can get their tickets?
Yeah, so you can get your tickets from going to www.bcchildren.com, or you can also call in if you would like to buy one through the phone. It's 1-888-888-1567.
Can you repeat that one more time, my friend?
Sure, so go to www.bcchildren.com, or if you'd like to get your tickets through the phone, you can call 1-888-888-1567.
And folks, if you are watching us on and subscribing, of course, onto our YouTube channel, I'll just let you know that right now we'll make sure that all of that information is in the chat box for you. So it'll be easy for you to take one click and boom, go get your tickets. All of the money is going to support young people in British Columbia, and we really, really need your assistance in making that happen and that fruition. It's just as simple as making a phone call and saying, yes, 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 I'll get a 50-50 ticket. Yes, I would like to, you know, contribute in some way or another. So make sure that your call to action is to pick up that phone. Guys, we're nearing the end of the program, and it's been such a treasure to meet all three of you. I feel so blessed that I got the opportunity to learn more about dwarfism. I'll be honest, I really have had no exposure to it at all. And so it's wonderful that we've had this conversation, and I thank you for your authenticity, your kindness to share, you know, with some of the stuff that made it hard for you guys, as well as the celebrations that you've experienced. On that note, my favorite part of the show, and I'm going to ask each of you to have your share on this, is, you know, we always like to imbibe a word of wisdom to our community for what we've experienced in our lives. So I'm going to let you guys take turns. And I think I'm going to start, Tracy, with you first, and then go to Jim, and then we'll end with Caden, if that's all right.
Oh,
what
I'm
are your
always the
thoughts
last to order at the restaurant because I'm so
I know, and today you're going to be the first.
words of
Brilliant.
wisdom. Oh boy.
Yeah.
Wow. Ooh, well, one of the things I guess I've always kind of just tried to remind myself is that I'm not raising a mini me. I'm always trying to raise somebody to think for themselves, to be independent for themselves. And just, you know, I've really stuck to that. I hope.
Yeah.
I've never expected Caden to be a mimic of me or do everything the right way that I would do it necessarily. Not necessarily, I shouldn't say that, not the right way, but the way I would think of it being the right way for me, right? So
right.
what's right for me is not right for him. And I think that's kind of my, you know, raising a child that has special needs or special disability needs and accessibility needs. I mean, that's kind of where I've always faltered back to, is just remembering that he's got to find his own way and do things for himself and find his own unique vision in the world. And so that would be kind of for anybody that, you know, is looking for words of wisdom to raise a child that has unique needs. That would be mine, is just remember, you do want to facilitate them to be their own person and allow them, you know, they've got to trip and fall a few times to be able to learn that, okay, that's not going to work for me, you know. So I hope Caden would would agree that I've been able to give him that space to do that and become his own person. So that essentially, I hope that's kind of what you meant by the question.
Exactly what I meant. Right on. And it's true, regardless. I mean, we raise our kids so that they can be individuals. We don't want them to be a carbon copy of who we are. What will be the joy in that? Right.
It'd be really easy to bubble wrap, you know, I mean, like,
Right.
it would be so easy. And I'm sure I've tried in some respects along the way, but ultimately I really hope I've allowed him the space to become his own person and do things his own way. So
Terrific. Thank you, Tracy. Jim, you're up.
That wasn't one word.
and oh, you meant one word?
Doesn't
Was I
have to
supposed
be one
sum it up in
word.
one word? Oh,
Words,
boy.
words of wisdom.
I always think just community.
Yeah.
And, you know, especially with all the crazy things that we've gone through in the last few years, and it's easy to focus on the division. But community is what makes daily life better by far. And BC Children's Hospital, even though we talk about community and Ladysmith and your own sense of community, it's really integrated into every community in BC. Like when we
Yes.
go there, there's parents from all over, Prince George, Mackenzie, like all over BC. It's not just Vancouver.
Yeah,
So it's
you
easy to
bet.
think of it as a Vancouver hospital, and it's really, it's not. It's a BC hospital, and most of the kids there are from throughout BC and Western Canada, actually.
Yeah, no, it's very true, actually, and a great reminder to that for sure.
I really say it's the heart of BC Children's Care.
Yeah,
It really is the heart, the center of all children's care in
Throughout
BC,
BC,
because
yeah.
everybody from small communities to big cities in BC all look to Children's Hospital for that expertise. If they don't
Indeed.
know what to do, they know that the heart of our community, or the heart of British Columbia, will know what to do. And that's, again, circling back to the Dream Lottery, that's what this money is for, is to ensure that we have that facility for all of BC to come back to. So
Absolutely.
you're
And the
absolutely
professionalism there is outstanding, bar none, anywhere
an
in the
extension of
province.
our family, essentially.
Totally.
The orthopedic department and many of the departments there. I mean, you've been cared for at not just the orthopedics, but the heart clinic, the vision, and like
Every
we've
time,
been
every time we
all
go
over.
there, they're, you know, they always ask, well, how was, and they knew you were graduating. Like they always know, well, how did grad go? Or
Yeah, it's
they
truly
really
an
are.
extension of our family. So
Yeah. Wow. That's amazing. Caden, it's you're up.
Oh, I've been thinking these last two answers. Well, my word of wisdom would definitely be to go buy a ticket and hopefully win a new home.
Yeah.
But for the Dream Lottery, but oh no, I think it's just be yourself. I mean, growing up with a difference that I've had, it's easy to just want to blend in or try and follow the trends, right? But I'm visibly different, and that's something that I'm not going to change. So being my own person, I don't think there's a problem with that. And try things that you want to try, right? I love filmmaking, and not everybody is a filmmaker, but it's something I love and it's something I enjoy. And it's
Yeah.
something that I enjoy doing because I can spread awareness about my condition and stuff like that. So find something that you enjoy and don't really worry about following the trends or kind of fitting into the mold. And if you have a difference, don't worry about it. Everybody's following their own groove, and it's just be comfortable.
Wonderful words. And the truth be told, I mean, you're the epitome exactly of that. As individuals, we're all individuals. We all have something. We all, you know, there's some that are visually seen, as in dwarfism, you can visually see it, but there's other conditions within every single one of us that maybe aren't seen. And so to, you know, toot your own horn and dance to your own beat is a good thing to do regardless, right? So thank you so much, all three of you, for being on the show today. It's been a pleasure to talk with you all. I look forward to talking with you again, hearing how you're doing at university. Let's keep in touch now that we know each other. I now consider you as part of the fold of the fabric of my life, and certainly the fabric of our community's life. And so thank you all for being such an important part of it. If you just tuned in, you missed a really good show, just saying. I'm so sorry that you missed it, but make sure you tune in on our YouTube station and watch us on Shaw Community. In the meantime, have yourself an extraordinary day. Don't forget, be kind to each other. We all need a little of that right now. Have yourself a wonderful, wonderful day. Bye for now.
thank you, Kathy.
thanks.
Thank you.